You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Naruto Enters K-Pop Demon Hunters. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Naruto was in paradise. A giant steaming bowl of miso ramen, broth rich and golden, noodles endless, pork belly melting in his mouth. He swam lazily through the broth, slurping as much as he could, laughing between bites. Then soft lips brushed his cheek. He turned, expecting another mouthful of noodles. And found himself kissing a dog. Naruto's eyes shot open. A wet tongue smeared across his face, hot breath huffing against his cheek. He groaned, shoving weakly at the furry muzzle. TCH from ramen heaven to dog drool. Figures. The German shepherd barked once, sharp and insistent, tail thumping against the side of the bed. Naruto sat up, rubbing his face with the heel of his palm, scowling through the mess of blonde hair that stuck up in every direction. All right. I'm up, he muttered, though the dream clung stubbornly to him. He could almost taste the broth still. His stomach growled loud enough to make the dog tilt its head. Naruto chuckled softly, scratching behind the shepherd's ear. Yeah, I know. Breakfast first. Ramen later. Naruto dragged himself out of bed, bare feet padding against the cool floorboards. The shepherd trotted after him, nails clicking softly with each step, tail still wagging like it had accomplished something great. He rubbed the grit from his eyes, stifling a yawn as he reached for a towel. From the bathroom down the hall came the faint hiss of water shutting off, followed by the creak of the shower door and the soft rustle of movement. Rumi. Even half awake, the thought of her drew the tension out of his shoulders. Just knowing she was here in his life, in his home still felt surreal. He'd faced gods and monsters without blinking, but somehow this waking up and sharing mornings felt more fragile, more precious than any battle he'd survived. He smiled faintly, stepping into the other bathroom to give her space. Steam curled out from the shower as he twisted the faucet on, the rush of water muffling his thoughts for a moment. Naruto let the hot water run over him, washing away the last of sleep and the remnants of his dream. The steady hiss filled the room, quieting his mind until all that was left was the warmth sinking into his sore muscles. By the time he stepped out, toweling his hair dry, he caught the faint sound of Rumi humming down the hall. A small smile tugged at his lips. She didn't even realize when she did it, those soft, wandering notes that slipped out when she thought no one was listening. He walked back into the living area and found her by the window, hair still damp, a mug cradled in her hands as she stared at the city waking up below. Morning light caught on her patterns, faint but present, glowing like brushed violet silk. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, eyes softening. Morning, she said. Morning, he echoed, the word carrying more warmth than he meant to. For a moment, neither of them moved. Just standing there, the weight of the night before and the chaos of their lives felt distant. Here, it was simple. Her. Him. The quiet between them. Naruto crossed the space and pressed a kiss to her temple, letting it linger. Rumi leaned into him, her fingers brushing lightly against his. Naruto smiled at her, brushing his hand gently through her damp hair. Sleep well? He asked. She leaned into the touch, her smile soft and unguarded. Ever since he'd admitted how much he loved her wearing her hair down, how he liked running his fingers through it when they lay together, she'd started doing it more often. It made moments like this feel almost sacred. He breathed her in, the faint trace of her shampoo still clinging to the morning air, and sighed. Yeah, life was good. A sharp bark cut through the quiet. The shepherd planted himself at their feet, tail wagging furiously, eyes locked on his empty bowl. Naruto groaned. Quit it, Kakashi. You'll wake up the neighbors. Rumi snorted, covering a yawn with the back of her hand. Remind me again why I let you name the dog. Naruto smirked as he stepped away to scoop kibble into the bowl. Because you knew I'd pester you about it forever if you didn't. Kakashi dove into his food with the same reckless hunger Naruto usually reserved for ramen, the sound filling the apartment. Rumi shook her head, amused despite herself, while Naruto watched with a grin, the domestic scene so ordinary it almost felt unreal. Rumi arched a brow, her tone dry. Naruto, you named him after your dead sensei. Naruto nearly choked on air, hands flying up in protest. Hey, come on. Kakashi-sensei had a summoning contract with dogs. It only made sense. He waved his hands wildly as if trying to ward off her judgment, face flushing with boyish defensiveness. Rumi just shook her head, lips twitching as she tried not to smile. You're impossible. Smart, he corrected with a grin, crouching down to scratch the shepherd's ears while the dog wolfed down his breakfast. See? He likes it. Kakashi's tail thumped against the floor like agreement, and Naruto shot Rumi a triumphant look that made her roll her eyes though the warmth in her gaze betrayed her. The doorbell chimed, sharp against the easy rhythm of the morning. Naruto's grin widened instantly. Hey, bet you $20 I can guess who it is. Rumi crossed her arms, unimpressed. Naruto, your eyes are orange. I know you're in sage mode. He puffed his chest out anyway, triumphant. Ever since he'd doubled down on his training, sage mode had come quicker, steadier like flicking a SWCH. He could hold it now without feeling like his lungs were going to burst. Doesn't make me wrong, he said smugly. Rumi rolled her eyes, but she couldn't quite hide her smile. Come in. It's open, she called. The door swung wide and Zoey practically exploded into the room, bouncing on her toes like she hadn't seen them in years instead of just yesterday. Mira followed at a steadier pace, her arms folded, eyes scanning the space like she was already picking apart details Rumi hadn't even noticed. Rumi. Naruto. Zoey squealed, launching herself into a hug that caught Rumi off guard. I missed you. Naruto blinked, amused, as Zoey clung like a koala. Pretty sure we had lunch together yesterday, he muttered, scratching his cheek. Zoey gasped mid-step, spotting the shepherd at his bowl. Oh my god, Kakashi. How are you, buddy? The dog bounded straight into her arms, tail wagging like a fan as Zoey squealed, spinning him around. Mira sighed, rubbing her temple. Really? Naming him after your old sensei? That's a bit cliché, don't you think? Naruto staggered back like she'd stabbed him, dropping to his knees and clutching his chest. Oh my goodness, the pain. Betrayed on all sides. Rumi snorted, shaking her head. You're all ridiculous. Then, more pointedly, so what brings you two by this early? Zoey blinked, then tilted her head. Rumi, it's noon. As in 12 o'clock. Her eyes went wide, realization dawning like she'd uncovered a scandal. Wait a sec, did you two have a busy night? She punctuated the words. With the most exaggerated hip thrusts imaginable. Rumi's jaw dropped, her face lighting up red as Naruto choked on air, sputtering. Naruto was still sputtering when Mira finally scoffed, cutting through Zoey's antics like a knife. Please. You act like we can't tell when they haven't. Both Naruto and Rumi froze. Mira leveled a finger at Rumi first. This one practically glows if she gets it. Then, without missing a beat, she jabbed her other hand at Naruto. And this one actually calms down for once. The silence that followed was deafening until Zoey slapped a hand over her mouth, then burst out laughing so hard she nearly dropped Kakashi. Rumi's face turned crimson. Mira, she hissed, scandalized. Naruto's jaw worked soundlessly for a second before he threw his hands up. Why am I being dragged into this? I didn't do anything. Exactly, Mira said dryly, sipping her tea like she hadn't just detonated the room. Zoey howled, Rumi buried her face in her hands, and Naruto muttered something about traitors under his breath. Luckily, Naruto was blessed with quick wit. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Nobody else ever had. He straightened up, smirk tugging at his lips. I see how it is, Mira. You're just jealous. Before anyone could stop him, he strode over, scooped Rumi up like she weighed nothing, and tossed her over his shoulder. She squeaked, her fists pounding against his back. Naruto. Put me down. Unbothered, he planted a hand on his hip, grinning at Mira. That I've got the world's most appealing girlfriend, and you don't. Rumi's face was as red as her patterns, kicking lightly in protest. You absolute idiot. Zoey collapsed onto the couch in hysterics, hugging Kakashi who barked along like it was a game. Mira just pinched the bridge of her nose, muttering, brick. Total brick. Naruto puffed out his chest, triumphant. Jealous confirmed. Dead confirmed if you don't put me down. Rumi snapped, smacking his shoulder until he sheepishly set her back on her feet. She smoothed her hair, glaring at him through her blush, while Zoey howled, oh my god, you two are killing me. Naruto finally set her down, hands raised like he'd just won a match. See? Totally worth it. Rumi's glare could have cut steel. She crossed her arms, cheeks blazing, but the corner of her lips betrayed her twitching upward despite herself. You're impossible, she muttered. And yet, he said, leaning in with that stupid grin, you're still here. Her blush deepened, but she didn't push him away this time when his hand brushed against hers. Instead, her fingers curled, just barely, hooking into his. Zoey clutched her chest like she was watching a drama unfold live. Oh my god, they're doing the soft hand thing. Naruto blinked. The what now? Mira sighed, standing and grabbing her bag. The thing where we all regret being in the same room as you two. I'm going to get coffee before you make me puke. Zoey snorted into her sleeve, Kakashi barked like he agreed, and Rumi just gave up with a laugh small, quiet, but warm. Naruto puffed up proudly, still holding Rumi's hand. See, Mira just doesn't appreciate true romance. Rumi rolled her eyes, but her fingers stayed tangled with his, her smile tugging wider despite her best efforts. Zoey, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with joy. Oh, I live for this. You two are like a rom-com that accidentally got dropped into our lives. Hand-holding, bickering, carrying her over your shoulder classic. Naruto tilted his head, smirking. Classic, huh? Then what comes next? Zoey gasped theatrically, slapping a hand to her mouth. The kiss, obviously. Rumi choked, yanking her hand away. Zoey. Naruto, never missing a beat, leaned forward with a mischievous grin. Well, if the script says so. Before he could make good on it, Rumi shoved a pillow into his face, flustered beyond saving. Zoey fell over laughing, Mira shouted from the kitchen, keep it down before the neighbors complain again, and Kakashi barked like he was cheering Naruto on. When Naruto pulled the pillow down, his grin was softer this time, more genuine. Rumi caught it and despite her blush, she couldn't help smiling back. For a moment, the chaos around them blurred. Just him. Just her. And the quiet comfort of knowing that, ridiculous as he was, she wouldn't trade him for anything. Zoey squealed so loud even Kakashi barked in surprise. Oh, by the way, I saw your newest book announcement, Naruto. I already pre-ordered it. Her grin softened into something almost tender. The Survivor, 3rd edition, Chunin exams. Naruto blinked, then smiled, not his cocky grin, but something quieter, warmer. That means a lot, Zoey. Really? His voice dropped into that rare, earnest register. Then, with a mischievous tilt of his head, he added slyly, I just hope you enjoy it in 3 weeks. Zoey squinted, suspicious. 3 weeks? Don't tell me. Naruto leaned over to the TV stand, tugged open the drawer, and pulled out a neatly bound copy. Unless it's right here, waiting to be enjoyed. Zoey shrieked and practically lunged across the room like she was diving for a championship ball. Give it. Give it, give it, give it. Even Mira, who had rolled her eyes at all the chaos minutes earlier, couldn't help leaning forward. Her voice was calmer, but her curiosity betrayed her. Wait, is that actually the manuscript? You've already finished? Naruto puffed up proudly, holding the book over his head as Zoey scrambled against him. Of course I finished. I don't slack off when it comes to stories. This one's important. His smile softened again as his gaze flicked briefly toward Rumi. Zoey shrieked and practically launched herself across the couch, arms outstretched. Gimme. Gimma gimma jimma. Naruto laughed, hopping to his feet and holding the book high over his head. Nope. Pre-orders only. Rules are rules. Rules are stupid. Zoey wailed, bouncing to try and grab it. You can't dangle a book in front of me and then She nearly toppled over as he twisted away, grinning ear to ear. Even Kakashi started barking, running circles like he thought this was a brand new game. Mira sighed, arms crossed, but the faintest twitch tugged at her lips. She turned her head just enough that no one would notice the little smile sneaking out. It's not homework, it's art. Zoey shot back mid-leap, narrowly missing Naruto's arm. Exactly. Naruto said proudly, spinning out of her reach like he was back in the academy dodgeball days. Sacred art. To be protected at all costs. Zoey groaned in frustration, then dramatically collapsed into the cushions like she'd been defeated in battle. Fine. I'll wait 3 weeks. But just know I will never forgive you for this. Naruto chuckled, finally tucking the book back in the drawer. You'll thank me when you get it legit. Builds character. Rumi leaned against the counter, tea in hand, watching the chaos unfold. She caught the subtle curve at Myra's mouth, the one Mira probably thought no one noticed, and her own smile deepened. Because even Mira, for all her sharp edges, wasn't immune to Naruto's ridiculousness. Zoey was still groaning into the cushions like she'd been betrayed by the gods themselves when Mira finally spoke up. You know, Mira said, her tone dry as ever, for someone who insists he's not a child, you sure spend a lot of time acting like one. Naruto clutched his chest as if she'd shot him through the heart. Ouch. Harsh. Even after I was nice enough to almost let you see it early. Mira arched a brow. Almost doesn't count. Rumi caught the faint smirk tugging at Myra's mouth as she turned back toward her tea. It was quick there and gone in an instant, but it was there. She smiled into her cup, warmth blooming in her chest. Because Mira might never admit it, but she was starting to like him. Naruto's stomach growled loud enough to make the German shepherd bark in solidarity. He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. Guess my chakra reserves aren't the only thing empty. Myra's lips curved into a rare smirk. Finally admitting you're ruled by your stomach? That's progress. Naruto flushed, ears burning. Hey, it's not just my stomach. Then, brightening, he pulled a sleek black debit card from his pocket and waved it triumphantly. How about I treat you all to Mingles? My treat. Zoey's jaw dropped like he'd just offered to buy the moon. Did Naruto Uzumaki just volunteer to pay for lunch? Naruto puffed out his chest. DMN right. I'm a published author now. Got royalties and everything. Rumi didn't laugh like the others did. Instead, she just smiled quietly, watching him. She knew what this really meant. After years of scraping by, of having nothing that was truly his, being able to stand here and say my treat meant more than he'd ever admit out loud. And she couldn't have been prouder. They slipped into Mingles under the cover of simple disguises, hoodies, caps, and in Zoe's case, oversized sunglasses that made her look more suspicious than hidden. The hostess gave them a polite smile as they approached. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" Naruto's grin spread slow and mischievous. He leaned on the counter, voice dropping to a whisper. "Check under Kurama." The hostess blinked, then froze as recognition hit. Her eyes went wide. "Oh, of course, Mr. Uzumaki. Welcome back. Would you like your usual private room or something public this time?" "Private, please," Naruto said easily, the grin never fading. As she led them through the restaurant, she glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice. I have all of your books, Mr. Uzumaki. Every single one." Naruto winked, pulling a slim blue paperback from his bag. "Then here's a sneak peek into the Chunin exams arc. Not out for another few weeks." Her face lit up like fireworks as she clutched it to her chest. "Thank you so much." She tucked it away quickly and all but bolted off, probably to hide in the staff room and start reading. They slid into their booth, the soft lighting casting everything in a warm glow. Zoey glared across the table at Naruto, arms folded. "I see how it is." Naruto blinked innocently. "Huh? You're handing out sneak peeks to strangers, and what do we get?" "Nothing," she huffed dramatically. Naruto just leaned back, smirk tugging at his mouth. "Guess you'll have to pre-order like everyone else." Zoey gasped like he'd just betrayed her trust at the deepest level. Mira rolled her eyes. Rumi, sitting pressed against Naruto's side, hid a laugh behind her hand, but her eyes were warm, proud, and just a little amused at how easily he played this role now. They slid their menus back into the holder after ordering. Naruto had tried how he had tried to argue for ramen. But the way Rumi leaned closer, eyes glinting as she smiled just so, had undone every ounce of his resolve. "Fine," he'd grumbled, cheeks faintly red. "Sushi. But only because you asked." Now, as they waited, the soft murmur of the restaurant wrapped around them, the clink of chopsticks, the low hum of conversation, the faint hiss from the open kitchen. The world outside, fans, stages, prophecies felt far away here. Naruto tapped his fingers on the table, restless out of habit more than nerves. Rumi nudged his knee under the table with her own. "You really couldn't say no, could you?" He scratched the back of his head, laughing sheepishly. "Not when you look at me like that. It's unfair jutsu." Zoey, across from them, gasped dramatically. Did Naruto Uzumaki just admit weakness? "Write it down, Mira. Today's historic." Mira didn't even glance up from her tea. "I'll mark it on the calendar." Rumi just laughed, soft and quiet, her hand brushing his under the table. Naruto caught it, holding on, and for once he didn't care who noticed. The waiter slipped away with their order, leaving the four of them in the soft amber glow of the private booth. Naruto tapped the table lightly, restless even in the calm. "You know," he muttered, still pouting a little, "I really could have gone for ramen." Rumi leaned toward him, her shoulder brushing his. "You'll survive," she teased, her smile sweet but laced with quiet certainty. He looked into her eyes and, as always, felt the floor tilt beneath him. He'd crossed oceans, fought gods, and still, this was the thing that undid him the most. Across the booth, Zoey rested her chin on her hands, eyes sparkling. "Ugh, you two are disgusting. You know that, right?" Mira raised her teacup, her tone dry as stone. "Honestly, I'm just impressed he didn't fold faster. Usually it only takes her saying his name." Naruto's ears went red, but he tried to shoot back. "Hey, I didn't." Rumi cut him off with a small laugh, resting her hand over his under the table, squeezing just enough to ground him. He clamped his mouth shut, heart hammering, cheeks burning, but the tension in his shoulders melted away. The waiter returned briefly with tea and appetizers, and the table filled with chatter again, Zoey babbling about stage lights, Mira outlining rehearsal critiques, Naruto sneaking dumplings off Rumi's plate when he thought she wasn't looking. But beneath it all, Rumi kept feeling the press of his hand against hers, steady, warm, and sure. And when she glanced sideways, she caught him watching her, not the food, not the room, her. Her stomach flipped, and she ducked her head, smiling into her tea before anyone else could see. It was hard to believe it had only been a year since they met. In some ways, it felt like they'd known each other forever, like their souls had been orbiting each other, just waiting for the right moment to collide. He was hers, and she was his. Rumi's chest ached with the quiet truth of it. She loved him. She loved the way he goofed off, the boyish grin that never quite grew old, the warmth of his arms when he held her. Even the way he sometimes looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world made her heart catch every single time. He wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for her. She sighed, leaning into the rare moment of calm. In just 2 months, the Idol Awards would come again, and the whirlwind would start all over: rehearsals, concerts, travel, screaming fans. But right now, she got to just be. To relax. To fall deeper in love. Naruto caught her staring at him from the corner of his eye. A slow smile tugged at his lips as he leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed her ear. "You're my North Star," he whispered. Her smile bloomed instantly, soft and radiant. She turned her head just enough to meet his gaze, her voice quiet but steady. "That guides me through the stars." The world outside their little booth disappeared. Just him, just her, and the unspoken promise that no matter how wild life became, they would always find each other in the chaos. The rest of the meal passed in an easy rhythm: light chatter, stolen bites, and quiet glances that lingered just a little too long. Zoey and Mira argued over stage cues, Naruto nearly burned his tongue on hot tea, and Rumi laughed more than she had in weeks. When they finally stepped back out into the sunlit street, the city humming around them, Rumi laced her fingers through Naruto's without hesitation. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze, and when their eyes met, they didn't need words. Lunch was over, but the warmth of them lingered long after. Jiraiya sat in the gloom, the flames that made up his body flickering low and restless. His mind turned over Jinu's request again and again. The boy had been right with the Hanmoon reforged and glowing brighter than ever, the balance had shifted. Only the most powerful demons could now slip free of the underworld, and that made every move far more dangerous. The soul collectors were stagnant, watching, waiting. But Jiraiya's hand was forced. He couldn't risk sending the strongest of his subordinates. The blonde shinobi had proven too sharp, too relentless. If Naruto sensed the kind of demons Jiraiya truly commanded, if he felt their hunger as they stole souls, the boy would hunt them down without mercy, ending them before they could serve their purpose. Jiraiya's flames licked higher, crackling with dark amusement as his decision settled. "Very well, Jinoo," he rumbled, his voice echoing across the cavernous dark. "Don't steal souls. Don't draw too much attention. But do what you must." His laughter followed, low and cruel, rolling like thunder through the depths. Operation Saja Boys had begun. Naruto and Rumi stood at the door, waving Mira and Zoey off until the hall grew silent. Rumi leaned against the door with a small smile. "So what should we do now?" Naruto's grin curved slow, his eyes glinting as he stepped in close. His hands slipped around her waist, pulling her against him. His voice dropped, low and husky. "I've got a few ideas." Before she could reply, his lips brushed hers, soft at first, then lingering. She melted into it, her hands sliding up to his shoulders as the air between them shifted, heavier, warmer. He scooped her up with ease, her surprised laugh muffled against his mouth as he carried her down the hall. The bedroom door swung shut behind them. And the night was theirs. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the sheets in lazy stripes. The peace shattered with the shrill buzz of Rumi's phone on the nightstand. Naruto groaned, half asleep, and instinctively grabbed for a kunai. With surprising accuracy for someone barely awake, he hurled it toward the sound only for Rumi to snatch it out of the air just in time. "Oi," she hissed, smacking his arm with the flat of the blade. "Don't break my phone. That's the third time this week you've tried that." Naruto buried his face deeper into the pillow, grumbling. "Evil phone. Evil woman siding with it." Rumi rolled her eyes, fighting a laugh as she answered the call, her fingers still brushing through his messy hair. He cracked one eye open to pout at her, muttering, "Traitor." She smirked, leaning down just enough to kiss his cheek before lifting the phone to her ear. It was Bobby. His voice came through steady, professional as ever. "Hey, Rumi. Just making sure you and Naruto are still good to attend the orphanage charity event he's sponsoring." Before she could answer, Naruto shot upright, all traces of sleep gone, eyes sharp. "Did they cancel it, Bobby? Am I still speaking? Answer me, Bobby, I need answers." On the other end, Bobby sighed, sounding like he'd aged 10 years in a single breath. "Relax, Naruto. Everything's still good to go. The host even agreed to let you teach the kids how to make ramen. And don't forget the plant giveaway." Naruto's shoulders dropped with relief, and he flopped back onto the mattress dramatically. "Aki-kun, you're a hero. Thank you, Bobby, for your service." There was a pause. Rumi swore she heard Bobby mutter something under his breath, probably about quitting, before the line clicked dead. Rumi smiled softly, the kind of smile that came from knowing him deeper than anyone else ever had. She knew pieces of his past, the nights he went hungry, the loneliness that clung to him, how sometimes the only thing he could count on was a little potted plant he'd named Aki. To anyone else, it might have sounded silly. To her, it explained everything about the boy who never stopped fighting to be seen, to be loved. She reached up, pressing her forehead against his, closing the space between them. "Everything's going to be all right," she whispered. "The kids are going to love you. And so will the adults. You draw out the best in people, Naruto. You always have." His chest loosened at her words, the tension easing in a way only she could manage. He huffed a laugh and ruffled her damp hair with one hand, his grin boyish and a little shy. "Thanks, Rumi. I needed that." He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead, warm, grounding before straightening up. "All right. Guess I better not keep my new fans waiting." With that, he padded off toward the bathroom, humming under his breath, already psyching himself up for the day ahead. The day stretched wide before them. The charity event wouldn't start until 6, which gave them hours to prepare, or in Naruto's case, hours to cram in training before showtime. He slipped away with his usual grin and a promise to be back before dinner, while Rumi headed toward the studio, humming softly to herself. The city buzzed as she walked, sunlight glinting off glass and pavement. Her mind was already on the new track they were recording, the tempo, the choreography, the way Zoey would push too far and Mira would scold her when it happened. She collided with someone. The impact jolted her back, knocking her balance out from under her. As she stumbled, her gaze flicked upward and for an instant she froze. The man was striking. Broad shoulders filled his fitted shirt, every line of muscle pronounced beneath the fabric. Jet black hair fell in perfect waves across a sharp, angled jaw. He was the kind of man who looked carved, not born. Her feet slipped, her knees buckling. And then she wasn't falling. Strong arms caught her with practiced ease, steadying her as though she weighed nothing at all. "Easy there," Naruto's voice murmured near her ear, warm and familiar. His smile curved across his face, but his eyes weren't smiling. Rumi blinked. When had he gotten there? The stranger's gaze locked on Naruto, and in that moment something shifted. The air thickened. Beneath the man's skin, patterns stirred, faint, ominous marks glowing like embers. Naruto's grip on her tightened almost imperceptibly. His own violet patterns flared to life, crawling across his skin like living fire. His grin remained in place, but it had hardened, sharpened into something cold. I don't appreciate you knocking over a pretty lady, he said, voice calm but edged with steel. His hand clapped the man's shoulder with deceptive lightness. How about you watch where you're going, yeah? The stranger's throat bobbed. He nodded quickly, his composure cracking just enough to show the fear in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his steps too fast to be casual. Rumi's pulse hammered in her throat. She glanced up at Naruto, whose expression had already softened back into that boyish mask she knew, but she'd seen it. The shift. The danger. She swallowed hard. Whoever that man was, he wasn't ordinary. And Naruto knew it. Rumi's heart was still pounding when the stranger disappeared into the crowd. She turned in Naruto's arms, searching his face. How did you get here so fast?" she asked, breathless. Naruto exhaled slowly, his violet pattern still faintly glowing along his skin. "I was in sage mode," he admitted. "Felt his energy near you, and it wasn't normal. I didn't even think I just teleported." Her chest tightened. She'd never seen him look so focused, so deadly calm. "Naruto, who was that?" He shook his head, eyes narrowing in the direction Juno had gone. "I don't know his name, but I know what he is. He's strong. Stronger than most demons I've felt since coming here." His hand lingered on her shoulder, steady and grounding. "You've gotta be careful around him, Rumi. Promise me." Rumi's lips parted, but the words caught in her throat. She'd felt it too, that electric pressure in the air, like two storms colliding. She'd seen the way Naruto's grin had gone sharp and cold, a side of him she rarely glimpsed. She nodded once, silently, though her mind reeled. Naruto gave a faint smile, softer now, but his eyes never lost that edge. "Don't worry. I'll make sure he doesn't wreak havoc here." Juno didn't stop walking until the city lights swallowed him, until the noise of traffic drowned the frantic pounding in his chest. Only then did he slip into the shadow of a narrow alley, press two fingers to his temple, and vanish in a ripple of warped space. He reappeared in the dark, hidden safety of a shrine far from human eyes. The moment he landed, his breath hissed out between clenched teeth. He hadn't expected that. The plan had been simple: bump into the girl, test her reaction, gauge her power. Maybe even play the arrogant charmer, plant a seed of interest. If she liked him, she'd be easier to bend, easier to use when the time came. But then he showed up. That blonde. That demon. Juno hadn't even sensed him until he was already there, standing between them like a wall of violet flame. The patterns burning on his skin, the aura pouring off him, it was suffocating. Familiar in the worst way, like Indra's presence had been, only sharper. Heavier. And standing in front of it, Juno had felt small. A rabbit caught beneath the stare of a wolf, trembling and weak, knowing claws and teeth would tear him apart before he even moved. His best wouldn't scratch the surface. It would only make the wolf laugh. Juno leaned against the shrine wall, jaw tight, fists trembling. "So this is the one," he muttered. "The one Ji-ma warned me about." For the first time, doubt whispered sharp in his mind. Juno reappeared in the safe house, boots scraping against the cracked tile. The air was thick with smoke, sweat, and the faint hum of a half-broken speaker in the corner, the kind of place demons used to blend into the human world without drawing too much attention. Ryuk barely looked up from where he was tugging at the collar of his half-finished stage outfit, adjusting the embroidery like it was life or death. His eyes were sharp. "Well?" he asked, clipped. "Did you get enough info to move forward?" Shu was sprawled across the couch, lazily eating on a bottle, eyes half-lidded but sharp. He grinned around the rim, voice low and casual. "Seriously, how hard's it gonna be? Take out the hunters, smash the Han Moon again easy." Jian, the gray-haired one, blew his bangs out of his eyes with a sharp exhale. "Idiot. We can't. Not like that. You know why?" The blonde. His voice dropped, heavy. Jiraiya warned us. That demon's aura, if we draw too much attention, he'll find us. And if he does. The room went quiet. Jinu clenched his fists, still feeling the phantom burn of Naruto's violet pattern seared into his memory. Standing in front of that energy had nearly unmanned him, and the memory made his skin crawl. He forced his voice steady. He's stronger than Indra. Or at least he feels worse. Being near him was like prey staring down a wolf. Doesn't matter what I plan to do. If we're not careful, we're already dead. For the first time, Ryuk's smirk faltered. His hand stilled on the fabric. He saw me, Jinu added flatly. When I approached the hunter girl, he was already there. Didn't need to say much. Just made it clear she's under his protection. Basically told me to clear off. His jaw clenched. Obviously, he staked a claim with the hunters. The silence stretched. Shu gave a low whistle, leaning back. So what, we leave them be. Inu yawned from where he sat cross-legged on the counter, his glossy pink hair catching the dim light. He twirled a pen lazily, though his tone carried an edge. That's it then. We just back down. Jinu shook his head, slow and deliberate. No. We try again. But carefully. Slowly. He's too strong to take head-on right now. If we rush this, we're finished before we start. For a long moment, the only sound was the buzz of the broken speaker. Then, one by one, the demons nodded. The plan had to work. Naruto kissed Rumi and left, teleporting back to the beach, a remote island with no humans, only sand, trees, and the endless crash of waves. The perfect place to push himself until his body broke. He started by strapping weighted seals to his calves and sprinting across the beach. Each step sank deep into the sand, each stride dragging like he was wading through cement. The ocean spray slapped his face, sweat poured down his back, and still he ran. When his lungs burned and his thighs screamed, he ran harder. When his legs finally buckled, he dropped straight into push-ups. Sand stuck to his chest with every slam into the ground, turning sweat into grit. 100. 200. More. Then sit-ups with a boulder balanced across his chest, every crunch tearing fire through his stomach, his scars pulling tight, reminding him of everything he'd already survived. Tree climbing came next. He strapped his soul blade across his back for weight, gripping the bark until it shredded his palms. Up, down. Up, down. His arms trembled, but he kept going until his shoulders went numb. And when he staggered into the waves, it wasn't to rest. The ocean became his training ground. He fought against the pull of the tide, throwing punches, kicks, and spins through water that resisted every move. Salt filled his throat when he screamed, but he kept striking anyway, not from fear, but from rage. From defiance. Sweat and seawater streamed down his body, scars glistening in the sunlight. His chakra reserves were still too small for real ninjutsu without injuring himself, so he drilled his demon marks instead, forcing them to flare and ebb at will. They were noticeably stronger since he'd bonded his soul with Rumi, the violet glow thrumming in sync with the beating of his heart. Crazy, he thought, swinging his sword at a driftwood target until splinters flew. Crazy to think it's only been 10 months since the Idol Awards. 10 months since she threw herself at me in front of everyone. The memory almost made him laugh, even through the pain. Take that, Sasuke. I've got a queen, while all you had were fangirls. He snorted between reps, though it softened quickly into something quieter. Okay, maybe I was jealous as a kid. Everyone liked him. He didn't even try. But now. Now I've got her. I'm mature. Definitely mature. He lunged back into sword drills, each swing cleaner than the last as he let the blade guide him. The bond between them pulsed with each cut, each strike, his footwork smoothing until he almost floated across the sand. Through every burning muscle, through the ache in his lungs, one vow stayed sharp: if Jiraiya even lays a finger on Rumi, I'll find a way to kill him. No matter what it takes. By the time the sun dipped low, Naruto's body was wrecked. His arms trembled, his chest heaved like a bellows, his palms were raw and bloody. But when he looked at his reflection in the glowing edge of his soul blade, violet patterns faintly pulsing across his skin, he didn't see weakness. He saw a man sharpening himself into a weapon. Not for glory. Not for titles. But for her. Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow, muscles aching from hours of grinding through his regimen. He glanced at the sun sinking lower, then fumbled for his phone. 5 p.m. SHT. No time to cool down. No time to stretch. He pressed 2 fingers together, demonic energy sparking faintly around him, and in a flash he was gone. The humid salt air of the island vanished, replaced by the warm steam of their apartment. Rumi stepped out of the bathroom just then, steam trailing after her, hair damp and clinging to her bare shoulders. She froze, eyes wide at his sudden appearance, then narrowed when she realized what he was doing. Naruto didn't even try to hide it. He just stood there, sweat still dripping down his chest, staring at her like she was the only thing in the world worth rushing back for. Her lips curved in a half-smile, half-scold as she brushed past him. Stop ogling and go get a shower. But the way her peach swayed deliberate, unhurried told him she wasn't entirely upset. Naruto groaned under his breath, running a hand down his face. She's gonna kill me one of these days. He stumbled toward the second bathroom, every step heavier than any training drill. Naruto slammed the shower handle to cold, gritting his teeth as the icy water hit him like a kunai to the chest. He scrubbed fast, muttering under his breath. DMN Rumi, she knows exactly what she's doing to me. Poor little Naruto never stood a chance. He raked a hand through his hair, forcing himself to breathe through the chill, trying to cool the heat that had nothing to do with training. 5 minutes, that's all he could afford. By the time he stepped out, toweling his hair, he felt halfway human again. His reflection in the mirror gave him a lopsided grin, part exhausted shinobi, part man hopelessly wrapped around a girl's finger. Pulling on his shirt in a hurry, he muttered, at this rate, I'm gonna need sage mode just to survive her. Naruto tugged his shirt on, fingers fumbling with the hem like he'd forgotten how clothes even worked. The towel slipped from his hair, damp strands sticking up at odd angles, but he barely noticed. His pulse was still racing, not from the cold shower but from the image burned into his mind. Her sway. The smug little curve of her peach when she knew he was watching. DMN he muttered, dragging a hand down his face. She's trying to kill me. Death by CC girlfriend. That's the real prophecy, believe it. He leaned against the sink, staring at his reflection. His scars caught the bathroom light, faint but there, reminders of every fight he'd survived. But for all the BLD and battles, nothing rattled him like her. He could face gods and demons without blinking, but one look at Rumi stepping out of the shower and he was a stammering kid again. And the worst part? He loved it. Sheesh, he mumbled, shaking his head. Little Naruto never had a chance. Still, underneath the embarrassment, there was something steadier. A warmth that kept tugging at him, quiet but relentless. She wasn't just appealing, she was his. His North Star, his anchor. And that thought made the fluster ease into something else entirely, resolve. He straightened, bracing his palms on the sink. His reflection stared back, messy hair, scars, tired eyes, and that stubborn grin that refused to quit. All right, listen up, Uzumaki, he told himself, voice firm now. You've fought gods, survived wars, carried the whole DMN world on your back. If you can do all that, you can walk out there, hold your head high, and not turn into a tomato when your girlfriend looks at you funny. He jabbed a finger at the mirror. Got it? You're Naruto freakin' Uzumaki. Hokage material. World saver. Ramen connoisseur. And now boyfriend. Time to man up and act like it. With a shaky breath, he rolled his shoulders like he was about to head into battle. A grin tugged at his mouth. Alright, Uzumaki. Game face on. Time to face her. Naruto strutted out of the bathroom with his game face on, pep talk still fresh in his head. He was ready. He was calm. He was. And then he saw her. Rumi stood by the window, the soft light spilling over her. The purple dress she wore brushed her knees, simple but elegant, the strapless cut showing just enough curve to tease without flaunting. Her braid draped over one shoulder, catching the glow of the city beyond. Naruto's jaw dropped. Every ounce of composure he'd built in the mirror evaporated on the spot. Whoa, he breathed before he could stop himself. Rumi's cheeks went pink, and she folded her arms quickly, trying to mask her embarrassment with a huff. Don't just stand there gawking, she said, though her voice betrayed the faintest smile. Hurry up and finish getting dressed. Before he could stumble through an answer, she gave him a gentle shove toward the bedroom. Naruto stumbled, then turned just enough to waggle his eyebrows at her, a mischievous grin slipping through his fluster. Rumi rolled her eyes, laughter bubbling out despite herself. A few minutes later, he emerged in a sharp black tuxedo, a BLD red dress shirt beneath it, a deep purple tie knotted at his throat, black slacks pressed clean, and red dress shoes polished enough to catch the light. For once, even Naruto couldn't deny he looked the part. And the way Rumi's gaze lingered on him even as she tried to play it cool told him she thought so too. They hurried out the door, heels and polished shoes clicking against the hall, and stepped into the cool night air. The sleek black limo waited at the curb, its headlights gleaming like watchful eyes. The driver opened the door with a polite bow, and Naruto held out his hand for Rumi as she slid inside. He followed, tugging at his tie like it was trying to strangle him, before finally settling against the plush seat. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows as the car pulled away. For a few quiet moments, it was just the low hum of the engine and the faint clink of ice in the glasses set neatly in the console. Naruto turned toward her, his smile softer now, strppd of the usual bravado. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. It means a lot. Rumi glanced at him, her violet patterns flickering faint beneath her skin in the dim light. She returned the smile, calm and sure. Of course, she said simply, as if the idea of not being there with him was unthinkable. Naruto exhaled, some invisible weight easing off his shoulders. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers, and for the rest of the ride they sat like that, no words, no noise but the hum of the city, just two hearts beating steady on the way to something bigger than either of them. The limo rolled to a smooth stop outside the orphanage hall, its brick walls lit by strings of golden lights. The air buzzed faintly with chatter, music, and the warm clatter of food being set out. A banner stretched over the entryway in bold letters, Annual Charity Gala for the Children's Home. Naruto stepped out first, straightening his jacket before offering his hand to Rumi. Cameras flashed from the small press crowd at the edge of the sidewalk, not idol-level attention, but enough to make him swallow nervously. Inside, the space felt alive. Tables lined with crafts from the kids, flower arrangements in every corner, and clusters of people chatting in their best evening clothes. The smell of food mingled with fresh paint. Someone had clearly gone all out sprucing up the place for the gala. Naruto was swept into a firm handshake almost immediately. An older man with graying hair clapped him on the shoulder. Mr. Uzumaki, thank you again for sponsoring this year's event. Your generosity means a great deal. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, grinning sheepishly. Ah, don't mention it. I just wanted to help out, you know. Rumi drifted to his side, her presence steady. She shook hands with a woman who recognized her from Huntrix, and within seconds a small crowd of younger fans clustered around her, asking questions shyly. Rumi knelt down, smiling, talking to them like they were old friends, the idol mask gone, just warmth in her voice. Naruto watched her, chest tightening with quiet pride. Before he could get lost staring, another voice called him over. Mr. Uzumaki, would you mind saying a few words later? And don't forget the ramen demo station is already set up. Naruto froze mid-step. Wait already. He glanced helplessly at Rumi, who covered her laugh with her hand. Don't worry, she whispered as she brushed past him, fingers grazing his arm. You'll do great. Just don't set anything on fire. Hey, he hissed after her, but his grin ruined the protest. Naruto knelt at the long table, sleeves rolled back, his grin wide and boyish as flour dusted his red shirt. Kids swarmed him like bees to honey, tugging on his arms, clamoring for his attention. He didn't miss a beat showing one boy how to keep his fingers curled safely while chopping, letting another roll pasta under his guiding hands, lifting a girl no older than 6 onto his lap as she stirred broth with all the seriousness in the world. Look at you, Naruto said warmly, guiding her hand on the ladle. Ramen chef in training. Believe it. The girl giggled, clinging tighter to him, and the sound made half the adults watching melt. From across the room, Rumi's chest swelled. Her smile was soft, almost private, as she watched him laugh with the children, patient and unshaken, as if the chaos was his natural element. The scars across his hands and arms looked sharper under the bright lights, but here they didn't make him look dangerous, they made him look enduring. Strong. He's good with kids. The voice came low and close at her shoulder. Rumi stiffened, turning sharply. Celine. She stood dressed to match the gala's glow, her usual coat replaced by a fitted dress, her posture straight and elegant. But her eyes carried the same sharp gleam they always had. Celine, Rumi said flatly. What are you doing here? Their relationship had never been terrible, but strained didn't even scratch the surface. Celine's lips curved into a faint smile. Relax. I didn't come to fight. I came because I need to talk to Naruto. Rumi's eyes narrowed, arms folding across her chest. Why? Because, Celine said simply, tilting her head toward the shinobi surrounded by laughing children, he's never officially become a hunter. He needs to do the trials. And soon. Rumi's stomach dropped. The word trials hit heavier than she wanted to admit. But that's a whole month, she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. A month of training, testing, separation. Celine cut her off with a dry scoff. Rumi, honey, if you can't go a month without contact, then it's never going to work. Relationships are more than hand-holding and kisses. If you love him, you'll let him do this. You'll push him to. Rumi's throat tightened, anger sparking hot, but underneath it was a knot of fear she couldn't shake. Celine wasn't wrong. She hated that she wasn't wrong. This would be the first time since Naruto had entered her life that they wouldn't see each other every day, even if it was just collapsing into sleep side by side. Her heart squeezed as she looked back at him, laughing as a boy proudly presented a misshapen noodle. The thought of him gone even for a month made her chest ache like a wound. After the kids washed up and devoured their bowls of ramen, some spilling more broth on themselves than in their mouths, Naruto excused himself to freshen up. When he came back, his hair still damp and shirt crisp, his grin was wide and ready. But the moment he spotted Rumi, the smile faltered. She sat apart from the bustle, her shoulders drawn in, eyes distant. Naruto slipped up behind her, his big hands finding her shoulders, kneading them gently. What's wrong? He asked, voice low, warm. Rumi exhaled hard through her nose, not meeting his eyes. Celine's here. She said she needs to talk to you later. Naruto frowned, his thumbs pausing against her tense muscles. Okay, but why do you look like you just swallowed poison? I thought you and her patched things up. Patched is a word, Rumi muttered, lips twisting. Naruto leaned down, pressing a kiss to her temple. Hey. Whatever this is, we'll get through it. Together. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to sink into that certainty he carried like armor. She managed a weak smile, whispering back, yeah. Together. Naruto straightened, opening his mouth to say more, but movement at the edge of the room caught his eye. The host was gesturing toward the stage, beckoning him forward. Naruto gave Rumi's shoulders a last squeeze. Looks like I'm up. He winked, forcing his grin back into place. Time to win some hearts with ramen. But as he walked toward the spotlight, Rumi's weak smile faded, her worry still gnawing at the edges of her heart. Naruto walked up to the microphone, his smile warm and steady. The crowd hushed, expectant. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying easily. "I'm sure you all know why we're here tonight. We're here for the kids." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over the room, lingering on the children still finishing their bowls of ramen. "As an orphan myself, I remember what it felt like," he continued, softer now. "Lonely. Scared. Sometimes hopeless. You grow up thinking maybe no one sees you, that maybe you don't matter." His hand curled around the mic stand, grounding himself. Then he smiled that boyish grin that could light a room. "But you know what would have made my day back then? Just one smile. And maybe a warm bowl of ramen." He chuckled lightly, and a ripple of laughter moved through the audience. He leaned in closer to the mic, his voice brightening with conviction. "That's why we're here, to give these kids a reason to smile. To show them they matter. So let's say no to sadness and yes to ramen." The crowd erupted the second the words left his mouth. Applause thundered, so loud the walls seemed to vibrate with it. A few kids who were still at the tables shot to their feet, pumping their fists and chanting, "Ramen! Ramen! Ramen," like it was the anthem of their lives. Parents wiped their eyes quietly, some with soft smiles, others with hands pressed to their mouths. The older kids clapped the hardest, eyes shining like they'd just seen themselves reflected in him, someone who understood. Rumi pressed her hands together against her chest, her heart swelling until it ached. The pride in her eyes was unmistakable, shimmering as if she'd been holding it in since the moment she met him. This wasn't the shinobi who fought demons, or the jokester who made her laugh till her stomach hurt. This was Naruto at his most raw and real. And gods, she loved him for it. Even Bobby, normally cool-headed and composed, was blinking suspiciously fast as he muttered to himself, "Kids got it. DMN kids really got it." Naruto bowed slightly, rubbing the back of his neck with that same awkward humility that somehow made the audience love him even more. Cameras flashed, people rose to their feet, and the energy in the room felt brighter, lighter. And as he stepped off the stage, cheeks faintly pink, his gaze found Rumi's. Her smile told him everything he needed to know. He hadn't just changed the room. He'd changed her too. But just beyond her shoulder, he noticed Celine waiting, composed, unreadable, and clearly biding her time. Hey guys, DIZ 1989 came up with a good point in his review, so I may include a deleted scene to help y'all understand why Naruto has to go. Naruto approached Celine with an easy smile, his voice warm despite the weight pressing in around them. "Hello, Celine. What brings you here?" Whatever Rumi felt about her didn't matter. Naruto couldn't forget what Celine had done for him. She had saved his life and given him the tools that carried him through the battle with Indra. For that, he owed her more than words. Celine's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Hello, Naruto. I've come to formally invite you to the Hunter trials." The way she said it left no room for argument. It was less an invitation, more a summons. Naruto let out a short scoff, folding his arms. "Really? Why bother? I killed Indra, didn't I? That should be more than enough to prove I'm strong enough to be a hunter." Celine cleared her throat softly. "As impressive as that is, there's more to being a hunter than strength. The elders are concerned." Naruto raised a brow. "Concerned? You're a half-demon from another world," she explained evenly. "Hunters, special or not, are usually trained from BRTH, taught discipline and values that keep the order strong. The only reason there isn't still a bounty on your head is because I vouched for you. But my word only carries so far." Her expression softened, though her tone remained firm. If you want to keep you and Rumi safe, if you want the association to stop looking over your shoulder, you need to show them you'll follow their rules. Naruto let out a long sigh, shoulders slumping. So basically I have to prove I'm loyal and won't step out of line. Celine's smile returned, light but edged with finality. Now you're getting it. She slipped a folded slip of paper into his hand and address, a time, and then turned away, leaving just as quietly as she had arrived. The applause and flashing lights felt like a dream now. By the time morning rolled around, the only sounds were the quiet clink of silverware and the sizzle of eggs in the pan. Naruto sat at the table, hair sticking up in every direction, still in a loose t-shirt and sweats. He leaned on one elbow, shoveling rice into his mouth with the other hand, eyes half-lidded but content. Across from him, Rumi sipped her tea, her damp hair tied back loosely, her patterns faintly glowing in the morning sun that filtered through the window. She watched him devour his food like a man starved and couldn't help the small smile tugging at her lips. "Slow down," she said softly. "No one's going to steal it from you." Naruto grinned around a mouthful of rice. "Force of habit," he mumbled, swallowing. Then, quieter, "Besides, food tastes better now." Her brow arched. "Better than what?" He scratched his cheek sheepishly. "Better than the instant ramen I grew up on. Better than eating alone." His gaze flicked up, steady, warm. "Better, 'cause I've got someone to share it with." Rumi felt her chest tighten, the tea suddenly sweeter on her tongue. She hid her fluster by taking another sip, though the corners of her mouth betrayed her. The German shepherd padded into the room and flopped at Naruto's feet with a heavy sigh. Naruto leaned down to scratch behind Kakashi's ears, grinning at the way the dog's tail thumped lazily against the floor. For a few moments, everything was simple, just breakfast, quiet sunlight, and the soft hum of a morning where the world outside didn't exist. Reality crashed back down once breakfast plates were cleared. Naruto set his bowl in the sink, glancing over his shoulder with a casualness that didn't quite reach his eyes. "So the hunter trials," he said. Rumi froze, the words dropping like a stone in her chest. The memory of last night, Celine's quiet warning as Naruto handed a kid a potted plant, resurfaced in sharp detail. "Yeah," she muttered, trying to keep her tone even. "Are you going to go?" Naruto nodded, drying his hands on a dish towel. "I think I have to. And besides," his grin flickered, soft but not steady, "you and the girls are about to be swamped with tours and concerts. Maybe it'll even be fun." "Fun?" Rumi scoffed, harsher than she meant. "It's in Japan, Naruto." Her throat tightened. Why couldn't she have him just a little longer like this? Haven't they both already given enough? Before she could say more, a sharp pop echoed through the room. She spun around. And her jaw dropped. There, wobbling on the chair, was Naruto. Except 2 years old. His spiky hair stuck out in every direction, his violet patterns faint and soft like paint smudges, his wide blue eyes blinking up at her in confusion. "What's the matter, Rumi?" Baby Naruto squeaked, completely oblivious to what had happened. He hopped off the chair, immediately face-planting on the floor. He scrambled up, looking around in wide-eyed shock. "Hey, what happened to the chairs? When did they get so big? And when did you get so big?" Rumi could only gape, hands half-raised as if she might catch him again. Right then, the front door opened. "Hey, guys." Zoe's cheerful voice rang out. "We were wondering if you wanted to." She stopped dead. Mira, just behind her, froze mid-step. Both of them stared. Zoe gasped. Myra's eyes nearly bulged out of her head. "What the hell, Naruto?" Mira demanded. "What kind of KNKYSHT are you two into?" Naruto squeaked indignantly, stomping his tiny foot. "I'll have you know it's a jutsu gone wrong. We are not perverts." He tried to sound loud and commanding, but the high-pitched baby voice made it impossible. Zoe squealed, rushing forward. "Oh my god, he's so cute. She scooped him up before he could run, hugging him so tight he squeaked again, little arms flailing. Look at his chubby cheeks. Naruto's face went red as he wriggled helplessly. Rumi. Help me. His puppy dog eyes shimmered with desperate appeal, and in toddler form, they were lethal. Even Mira, who looked like she was fighting for her life not to crack, finally muttered under her breath, "You are a cute baby." Naruto's pout instantly flipped into a beaming smile. He wriggled free from Zoey's arms and waddled straight to Rumi, reaching his little hands up. Uppies. Rumi blinked down at him, heat rushing to her face. No. I am not holding you. He pouted harder, eyes glistening. Uppies. Rumi groaned, dragging a hand down her face. Unbelievable. But she bent anyway, scooping him up against her peach. His tiny arms wrapped snugly around her neck, his cheek pressing against her collarbone as he sighed in contentment. Rumi's heart betrayed her despite the absurdity, despite her frustration, because gods, he really was adorable. The chaos didn't let up for the next hour. Zoey refused to put him down, treating baby Naruto like the world's most precious doll. Mira, though still suspicious, couldn't stop sneaking glances every so often, muttering under her breath about how unfairly cute he was. Naruto, meanwhile, spent most of the time squeaking indignantly and flailing whenever Zoey tried to pinch his cheeks. Eventually, Zoey and Mira had to leave for a studio appointment, Zoey blowing dramatic kisses at Chibi Naruto, while Mira muttered something about "good luck, Rumi" on her way out the door. The apartment finally quieted. Rumi exhaled, exhaustion catching up to her. She glanced at the little blonde bundled in her arms. He yawned, rubbed his tiny eyes, and murmured sleepily, "Uppy still," before dozing off against her chest. Her heart softened. Carefully, she laid down on the couch, keeping him curled against her. His small hand clutched the fabric of her shirt, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Somewhere between stroking his spiky hair and listening to his tiny breaths, Rumi drifted off too. When she woke again, the weight in her arms was different. Taller. Warmer. She blinked blearily, then realized she was no longer holding a child. She was wrapped up in the strong, familiar embrace she'd grown used to. Naruto. Back to normal. He was fast asleep, nuzzling into her shoulder with that unguarded, boyish peace that melted every wall she tried to keep. A smile tugged at her lips, her chest blooming with quiet warmth. She pressed her forehead lightly against his, whispering so softly he couldn't hear. "Don't you ever change, Naruto Uzumaki." They both woke up about an hour later, the nap having done little to chase away the heaviness that hung in the air. Naruto rose first, slipping out of bed with a quiet determination. He didn't say much, just pulled out the travel bag from under the dresser and began to fold clothes with a soldier's efficiency. Black training pants. A few t-shirts. His journal. The little pouch of coins and trinkets the kids at the orphanage had given him last night. The sound of zippers and shifting fabric filled the room, steady and final. Rumi lingered at the doorway, her chest tight. She hated the sight of it, the bag filling up, the distance it represented. She wanted to tell him to stop, to just stay. But the words stuck, heavy and useless in her throat. By the time she finally left for the studio, the air between them hadn't been tense exactly, but it wasn't easy either. It was too quiet, too careful. Even Kakashi felt it. The shepherd paced the apartment restlessly, nails clicking against the floor, ears flicking back whenever he caught the slightest shift in their tones. He could sense it, that something was changing, pulling them in different directions. And Rumi, walking out the door with her bag slung over her shoulder, could feel it too. Naruto folded another shirt and pressed it into the bag, though his hands weren't steady. Every movement felt heavier than it should. 2 days. Just 2 days and I'll be gone for who knows how long. He hated the thought of it. Hated the way Rumi's smile looked tighter this morning, the way she lingered in the doorway like she wanted to say something but didn't. He wanted to tell her he'd be fine, that it was just another mission, but it wasn't. This was different. The hunter trials weren't about saving the world. They were about proving himself. And part of him was terrified of what he might lose in the process. He zipped a pouch shut too quickly, catching the edge of his knuckle. He hissed softly, shaking it off. "Get it together, Naruto. You've been through worse." But the quiet pressed in anyway. The kind of quiet that didn't come before battle, but before goodbye. His gaze drifted to the picture frame on the shelf one Zoey had insisted on taking after the Idol Awards, with all of them squished together, Rumi in the middle. Her smile was real in that photo, unguarded. Naruto's chest ached. "If I lose that smile because of this trial." He shook his head, tightening his grip on the zipper. No. He couldn't think like that. He was a shinobi. He'd faced gods, demons, and worse. He could face this too. Still, as he packed the last of his gear, his thoughts whispered the same truth over and over. He didn't want to be strong alone anymore. He just wanted to come back to her. The next 2 days passed quicker than Naruto wanted too quick. Every hour with Rumi felt like sand slipping through his fingers, and before he knew it, the morning of his departure had come. He'd thought about leaving in the middle of the night, slipping out quietly like a shinobi should. No tears. No scene. Just gone. But the idea sat wrong with him. It wasn't fair. He wasn't leaving for good. Just for a month. Maybe shorter. If he did well enough, maybe Bobby could even be convinced to lend him that private jet, call it hunter mental health. Really, it would just be proof of how amazing he was. Still, none of that eased the weight in his chest. Naruto leaned over the bed, brushing a stray lock of hair from Rumi's face. She stirred, her patterns shimmering faintly before fading back into her skin. Slowly, her eyes opened, still heavy with sleep. "It's time," he whispered. Her gaze sharpened instantly, "Sleep gone." The words hung between them, final and heavy. Rumi pushed herself up, the sheet pooling around her waist. Her fingers reached for him automatically, curling into the fabric of his shirt like she could hold him there if she just didn't let go. "You don't have to go," she whispered. Not an order, not even a plea. Just raw truth, torn out of her chest. Naruto cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing under her eye. His hand was warm, grounding, but his own smile trembled. "Yeah, I do." Her throat tightened. "A month feels too long." He leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "I know. Feels like forever already. But I'll come back. I promise." Rumi shut her eyes, her breath shaky. Her patterns flickered faintly, violet light blooming across her collarbone where his touch lingered. "You better," she said, but her voice cracked. Naruto kissed her then. Not quick, not playful, but slow, steady, like he was memorizing the shape of her lips, the taste of her, the way her hands clutched his shoulders as though she could keep him. His chest ached with every heartbeat, but he didn't pull away until he had to. When they finally broke apart, he pressed another kiss to her forehead, whispering against her skin, "You're my North Star. Always." Tears slipped free despite her smile. She whispered back, "And you're mine." Naruto straightened, shouldering his bag. He didn't trust his voice anymore, so he gave her one last look, that lopsided grin, filled with more love than words could hold, and turned toward the door. Rumi sat frozen, her hand pressed to her lips where his kiss still burned, watching as the man she loved walked away. The silence he left behind felt unbearable. As Naruto boarded the plane, bag slung over his shoulder, he let out a long sigh. The engines roared low in the background, but all he could hear was the echo of Rumi's voice, the warmth of her forehead pressed against his. It was going to be the longest month of his life. He dropped into his seat by the window, staring out as the runway lights blurred past. His hand drifted to his chest, fingers brushing over the faint glow of his patterns that hadn't fully settled since their goodbye. Violet, stubborn, unyielding like her. Just a month, he murmured to himself. I can handle a month. The plane lifted into the sky, carrying him farther from her with every passing second. But in the shadows beyond the terminal, a pair of eyes tracked the departing jet, cold and calculating. Their gaze lingered until the plane was just a speck against the clouds, before melting back into the night. Naruto didn't notice. And that was the point. Jinu couldn't believe his luck. From his perch in the shadows outside the terminal, he'd seen it with his own eyes, the blonde demon boarding a plane. Not just any plane, either. A one-way flight out of Korea. Destination, Japan. He almost laughed, biting down on the sound to keep it from echoing in the alley. The timing was perfect. The thorn in their side, the wolf who had cowed even him into silence, was leaving the country. How could this day get better, he muttered under his breath, lips curling into a smile. With Naruto gone, even if only for a month, the board was wide open. They could move without fear of that crushing aura bearing down on them. They could slip closer to the hunters, whisper poison into their ears, groom them into turning on the Hanmoon themselves. Or, failing that, the Saja boys could take matters into their own hands. Either way, with the demon absent, their chances of success had never looked brighter. Jinu melted back into the crowd, his eyes glinting with anticipation. "Enjoy your little trip, Uzumaki," he whispered. "We'll be busy while you're gone." Naruto slumped back in his seat, chin propped on his hand as the plane droned steadily through the clouds. Board didn't even begin to cover it. He fiddled with his phone, still a little proud he'd figured out how to unlock it on the first try this time. He missed his old flip phone simple, no fuss, didn't glare at him with 17 notifications he didn't understand. But Rumi had insisted. "Smartphone, Naruto. You'll thank me later." And, okay, maybe she was right. Because now he could scroll through the little gallery she'd made for him, all the photos they'd taken together. Some were blurry selfies, some perfectly posed thanks to Zoe's insistence, but every single one made his chest feel full. He swiped to the shot of her laughing with her head thrown back, braid swinging, and grinned to himself. "Man, glad I let her talk me into this thing." A faint sound drew his attention. He tilted his head slightly and caught sight of the two teenage girls seated beside him. One was glued to her tablet, but the other was staring at him. Wide-eyed. Mouth parted just a little like she'd just spotted a celebrity. Naruto blinked. Then offered a small, awkward smile. The girl gasped and ducked her head, fumbling with her earbuds. Her friend leaned closer, whispering urgently, then both of them peeked up again, sneaking glances. Naruto caught snippets of their hushed voices. "That's him, I swear." "No way, from the Idol Awards." "Her Naruto. Look at the hair, the eyes, it's him." Naruto froze, realization dawning. "Oh, right. The kiss. The one that broke the internet." He scratched the back of his neck, chuckling under his breath as he slouched lower in his seat. "Great. Guess I really am the ramen guy with the idol girlfriend now." The girls burst into quiet giggles, stealing photos with their phones when they thought he wasn't looking. Naruto sighed. Rumi had warned him this might happen. Still, when he turned his phone face down to hide the picture of her, he couldn't help the little smirk tugging at his lips. Magnetic, she'd called him. Maybe she was right. Naruto gave them a small smile, nothing flashy, just that easy, natural grin that always snuck out when he thought about Rumi. The two girls instantly clutched each other's arms, trying and failing to whisper quietly. "I can see why she fell for him," one breathed. "Right? That smile, those whisker marks," the other added, practically swooning. "It's unfair." Naruto's ears twitched at every word. Shinobi hearing didn't miss much, and for once he wished it did. His cheeks warmed, and he ducked his head back toward his phone, pretending to scroll while fighting the urge to laugh. Still, deep down, their words echoed in his chest, not the attention, not the flattery, but the part that mattered: she fell for him. That was the truth he carried, no matter what anyone else thought. Naruto ducked his head, pretending to focus on his phone, but his grin wouldn't fade. Their whispers looped in his ears, replaying over and over. I can see why she fell for him. It was such a simple thing to say, but it hit him like a rasengan to the gut. Not because strangers noticed him, he'd had enough eyes on him for one lifetime. But because, in that moment, he thought of her. Her hand brushing against his when she thought no one was looking. The way her patterns lit up when she was excited. That quiet smile she saved just for him, softer than the one she wore on stage. She really did fall for me, huh? The plane hummed around him, voices rising and falling, but Naruto sat still, warmth blooming in his chest. For once, he didn't feel like the outcast or the clown. He wasn't the Jinchuriki, the monster, the weapon. He was hers. And that was enough. The second Naruto stepped off the plane, flashes exploded like fireworks. Microphones shoved toward his face, voices overlapping until it was just a wall of noise. Why Japan? Are you here for the Hunter organization? Where's Rumi? Did she come with you? Can you confirm the rumors of another book? Do you like donuts or dango better? Naruto blinked at that last one, then barked out a laugh. Man, you guys don't hold back, huh? Rumi? She's amazing, we're solid, don't worry about that. Hunters? Yeah, I've got business with them, but nothing bad. And, he scratched the back of his head, flashing that boyish grin that made the cameras go crazy. Let's just say there might be another book coming. Believe it. The donut versus dango question made him shake his head, chuckling. Come on, don't make me pick. That's like asking me to choose between ramen and more ramen. A ripple of laughter broke through the press, the flashes slowing for just a heartbeat. Naruto leaned into it, answering what he could, smiling, joking, weaving through questions with that mix of charm and honesty that always disarmed people. But as the circle closed tighter, he knew it was time to slip away. He sighed, theatrically lifting a hand to his forehead. All right, last question then, I really gotta go. A forest of hands shot up. Voices clamored, desperate. Naruto's grin stretched wide. He pointed past them, eyes bright. Hey! Look over there. Every head turned. Cameras fired at nothing. And by the time they whipped back, Naruto Uzumaki was gone. Only the echo of his laugh lingered in the terminal. Rumi was still in bed, curled tightly around Naruto's pillow like it was the only thing keeping her together. His scent lingered in the fabric, warm, faintly spicy, uniquely him. She pressed her face into it, unwilling to face the quiet morning alone. Kakashi sprawled beside her with a low whine, resting his chin on her peach, loyal even in silence. The door creaked open, and Zoe's voice sing-songed into the room. Rumi, don't tell me you're still in bed. It's practically noon. Mira followed close behind, arms crossed. Her sharp eyes softened slightly at the sight, though her tone didn't. Zoe tiptoed closer, peeking at the pillow in Rumi's arms. Oh my God! You're cuddling his pillow. Rumi flushed and hugged it tighter, saying nothing. Pathetic, Mira muttered, though the bite in her voice was missing. Zoe giggled and climbed onto the bed beside her, looping her arm through Rumi's. Don't worry. He'll be back before you know it. And until then, you've got us. Mira sat at the edge of the bed, her tone quieter, steadier. The best thing you can do is keep busy. Practice, rehearsal. The more you focus on that, the faster this month will fly. I know, Rumi whispered into the pillow. I just hate waking up without him. The room went still. The only sound was the hum of the city beyond the glass. Then Zoe perked up at the glow of her phone, eyes wide. Guys? You need to see this. She held the screen out. A video already blowing up online. Naruto at the airport, swarmed by paparazzi, answering questions with that easy smile. He was polite, charming, even laughing when someone asked about donuts. And then, mid-swarm, he pointed dramatically off-screen and shouted, "Hey, look over there." The cameras swung and when they turned back, he was gone. The clip ended in chaos, paparazzi shouting, fans screaming. Zoey burst into laughter. "That is so him. I can't believe he pulled that stunt in front of cameras." Mira pinched the bridge of her nose, though her lips twitched. "Idiot. Now he's going to trend for the next week." Rumi, despite herself, smiled into the pillow. Relief and affection spread through her chest like sunlight. That idiot. Always finding a way to make her laugh, even from miles away. Zoey scrolled further, cackling. "Oh my god, he's already trending worldwide. Hashtag disappearing ramen guy is number 3 right now." She read aloud between fits of laughter. Did this man just ninja vanish? "Marry me, Whisker Boy. Find Rumi and protect her at all costs, that smile is lethal. He's hot and polite. God hates me." She shoved the screen toward them, showing a fake Vogue cover edit. Naruto mid-smile, captioned the man who said yes to ramen, no to sadness. Rumi groaned into the pillow. "Why is this my life?" "Because you chose him," Mira said, dry as ever. Her gaze lingered, sharp but softened by honesty. "And because he can't stay invisible forever. He's magnetic, Rumi. People were always going to notice him." Rumi hugged the pillow tighter, her patterns flickering faint violet across her arms. "They can notice him. Just they can't have him." Kakashi barked once, like he agreed, and Zoey collapsed into laughter again. The girls stayed with her until afternoon, teasing, talking, keeping her from sinking too deep. But later, when the apartment was quiet again, Rumi curled back into bed. The glow of her phone lit the dim room. She scrolled without meaning to, thumb betraying her. More clips of him at the airport, that smile, those whisker marks. A blurry photo of him waving to a kid. And then her breath caught that vanishing trick again, with comments flooded in, "Protect this man at all costs." Her lips curved before she could stop them. She pressed the pillow tight against her chest, cheeks burning. "Idiot," she whispered softly into the dark. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." Her patterns shimmered faint violet, curling like threads of silk and fire. She closed her eyes, imagining his arms instead of the pillow, his voice instead of silence. And for a fragile moment, the distance between them didn't feel quite so unbearable. Naruto scratched the back of his head, frowning at the useless map app Rumi had insisted he learn. "TCH, forget this. Ramen shops aren't even marked, what's the point?" He shoved the phone into his pocket, wandering through the narrow streets of Takayama. Lanterns flickered in doorways, and the cool evening air carried the faint scent of grilled fish. He wasn't worried about being lost, he'd lived half his life that way, but the itch at the back of his neck told him something else. Someone was following. Light footsteps. Careful, but not careful enough. Naruto's grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Alright, let's play." He ducked into a side alley, letting the shadows swallow him. The pursuer quickened their pace, turning the corner. And found nothing. The alley was silent, only neon spill from the main street catching on trash cans and cracked walls. "Hello." The word slid against their ear like a blade. The girl spun, eyes wide. She couldn't have been more than 16, her hunter's uniform half hidden under a cloak, a silver insignia glinting at her collar. Naruto stood behind her, hands in his pockets, grin sharp but not unkind. "You've got guts, tailing me like that," he said, tilting his head. "But you're a little green to be sneaking after shinobi." The girl swallowed hard, but forced herself to meet his gaze. "I wasn't ordered to fight you. Only to retrieve you." She lifted her chin, though her voice trembled. "The hunters request your presence. For the trials." Naruto blinked. Then his grin softened, almost amused. "So that's it, huh?" He stepped back, giving her space. Guess I don't get a choice. Her shoulders sagged in relief, but her eyes stayed wary. Even standing still, his presence felt like a storm barely leashed. Naruto shoved his hands deeper into his pockets, violet patterns flickering faintly across his skin before fading again. Lead the way, kid. Let's see what these trials are all about. Rumi was fighting a battle. A terrible battle. Not against demons, not against fate, but against Naruto Uzumaki himself. She had one mission: convince him to keep a smartphone. Naruto, arms crossed, scowled at the device like it had personally insulted his mother. This thing's cursed. All I need's a flip phone. Buttons. Simple. You press it, it works. None of this scrolling nonsense. Rumi pinched the bridge of her nose. Naruto, you can't just scroll through life with a flip phone anymore. That's the point, he shot back, jabbing a finger at the phone. Every time I touch it, it yells at me. Yesterday it said low battery and then it died. Rude. And why does it keep asking me to update? I'm not changing myself for a piece of plastic. Rumi exhaled slowly. Patience. Breathe. She tried a different approach. Okay, but don't you like looking at pictures of us? Naruto froze. His scowl faltered. Well, yeah. And the videos of Kakashi tripping over the couch. His lips twitched, betraying a smile. That was pretty funny. And the fan posts from the charity event where they called you Whisker Prince. Now he was full-on blushing, rubbing the back of his neck. TCH, people are weird. But kinda cool, I guess. Rumi pounced on his hesitation. See? The smartphone isn't evil. It lets you keep memories. It lets you share ramen recipes. It lets you stay connected to me when you're away. He groaned, collapsing dramatically onto the couch. Ugh. Fine. But only because of you. If this thing tries to update itself one more time, I'm feeding it to the ramen pot. Rumi grinned in triumph, hugging the phone to her chest. Victory. Meanwhile, Naruto muttered under his breath, still missed the flip phone. The hunter compound in Takayama wasn't anything like Naruto expected. Stone walls, older than memory, climbed into the forest canopy, their surfaces etched with strange wards that pulsed faintly in the corner of his vision. Every mark seemed to hum with intent barriers, seals, protections that reminded him of Konoha's walls during war. Inside, the air was heavy. Not with ramen broth or city smoke, but with something older, sharper. A weight he recognized from battlefields, the air of people who trained to kill. The girl Aayaka, his so-called translator, walked a few paces ahead, her short cloak swaying. She hadn't said much since they left the streets, though he could feel her sneaking glances at him, as though trying to decide if he was real. This place, Naruto muttered under his breath, hands shoved in his pockets, reminds me of home. Only colder. Aayaka slowed, tilting her head. Home. Naruto gave her a crooked grin. Yeah. A village full of stubborn idiots who thought they were tougher than they were. Guess every world's got one of those. Before Aayaka could answer, the compound gates groaned open. A line of hunters stood inside, silent, eyes sharp. Some were barely older than he'd been during the Chunin exams. Others carried themselves like veterans who had seen too many wars and lived to tell about them. At the center waited a man with silver-streaked hair and a robe marked with intricate symbols. His gaze pinned Naruto like a kunai. Kore ga Hanman o Murasaki ni Keita Kanketsu sha ka, the man said in Japanese. So this is the half-BLD who turned the Hanmoon violet. Naruto scratched the back of his head, ignoring the flicker of annoyance the title always gave him. Name's Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. And yeah, guess that was me. The man's lips curled into something not quite a smile. Anata wa ma shit iru hazuda. Na, anata wa koko ni iru. Shurken wa ashita kara hajimaru. Shippai suriba, shinu. His voice was flat, heavy as stone. You already know why you're here. The trials begin tomorrow. Fail, and you die. He turned slightly. Aayaka. Care o care no heya ni shiro. Show him to his quarters. Ayaka's eyes flicked nervously toward him. Naruto only grinned, boyish and unshaken. Meanwhile, back in Seoul, Rumi sat cross-legged on the studio floor, sweat dripping down her neck as she tried to focus on the choreography Bobby drilled them through. The mirrors reflected every movement, every stumble, every slip of focus, and hers had been slipping all day. Every beat, every lyric, Naruto's face slipped in uninvited. His grin. His voice. His stupid habit of vanishing when things got hard. She could still feel his kiss on her temple that morning he left, still hear the warmth in his laugh. Rumi. Bobby barked, snapping his fingers sharp enough to cut through the music. His eyes narrowed. Focus. If your head's in Japan, your feet are gonna trip here. The word stung, but not because they were cruel. Because they were true. She blinked, forcing herself back into rhythm, her heart pounding harder than the bass line thumping through the speakers. Sorry. Bobby exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. His voice softened, but the edge stayed. Look, kid, I get it. He's on your mind. But you don't get to split yourself in half here. Either you're in this studio, or you're out of it. These stages don't care how much your heart hurts. Rumi's chest tightened, her throat too thick to answer. Zoey, still stretching near the mirror, piped up with a grin that was too bright to be anything but forced. Hey, Bobby, cut her a little slack. It's not easy having your boyfriend whisked off to another country or whatever. TTT. Mira snorted, wiping her forehead with a towel. Then maybe she should use that as fuel. Turn it into energy instead of dead weight. That's what he'd want her to do. Rumi shot Mira a look, half glare, half gratitude she couldn't voice. Zoey crawled over on her hands and knees until she was sitting beside Rumi, bumping her shoulder against hers. Myra's right in her own scary way. But seriously, you've got us, Rumi. He's not here, but we are. And we're not letting you mope yourself into the ground. Rumi's lips trembled, but she nodded, clutching her water bottle tighter. Bobby crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes through the reflection in the mirror. His expression was firm, but not unkind. You've got talent, Rumi. You've got heart. Don't waste it staring at ghosts. Let that boy push you to work harder, not distract you from it. For a second, she swore she could hear Naruto's voice overlapping Bobby's, that same steady push forward, that same unshakable faith. She swallowed hard and stood, adjusting her posture, her violet patterns faintly glowing across her collarbone before dimming again. All right, she said, her voice steadier. Let's run it again. And as the music started back up, her body moved sharper, cleaner, powered not just by longing, but by the determination that when Naruto came back she'd be stronger, too. Meanwhile, back in Seoul, Rumi sat cross-legged on the studio floor, sweat dripping down her neck as she tried to focus on the choreography Bobby drilled them through. The mirrors reflected every movement, every stumble, every slip of focus, and hers had been slipping all day. Every beat, every lyric, Naruto's face slipped in uninvited. His grin. His voice. His stupid habit of vanishing when things got hard. She could still feel his kiss on her temple that morning he left, still hear the warmth in his laugh. Rumi. Bobby barked, snapping his fingers sharp enough to cut through the music. His eyes narrowed. Focus. If your head's in Japan, your feet are gonna trip here. The word stung, but not because they were cruel. Because they were true. She blinked, forcing herself back into rhythm, her heart pounding harder than the bass line thumping through the speakers. Sorry. Bobby exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. His voice softened, but the edge stayed. Look, kid, I get it. He's on your mind. But you don't get to split yourself in half here. Either you're in this studio, or you're out of it. These stages don't care how much your heart hurts. Rumi's chest tightened, her throat too thick to answer. Zoey, still stretching near the mirror, piped up with a grin that was too bright to be anything but forced. Hey, Bobby, cut her a little slack. It's not easy having your boyfriend whisked off to another country for hunter boot camp or whatever. Mira snorted, wiping her forehead with a towel. Then maybe she should use that as fuel. Turn it into energy instead of dead weight. That's what he'd want her to do. Rumi shot Mira a look, half glare, half gratitude she couldn't voice. Zoey crawled over on her hands and knees until she was sitting beside Rumi, bumping her shoulder against hers. Myra's right in her own scary way. But seriously, you've got us, Rumi. He's not here, but we are. And we're not letting you mope yourself into the ground. Rumi's lips trembled, but she nodded, clutching her water bottle tighter. Bobby crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes through the reflection in the mirror. His expression was firm, but not unkind. You've got talent, Rumi. You've got heart. Don't waste it staring at ghosts. Let that boy push you to work harder, not distract you from it. For a second, she swore she could hear Naruto's voice overlapping Bobby's, that same steady push forward, that same unshakable faith. She swallowed hard and stood, adjusting her posture, her violet patterns faintly glowing across her collarbone before dimming again. All right, she said, her voice steadier. Let's run it again. And as the music started back up, her body moved sharper, cleaner, powered not just by longing, but by the determination that when Naruto came back she'd be stronger, too. The warehouse echoed with bass, sneakers squeaking against polished floorboards, breath ragged as the Saja boys pushed through another run. Sweat dripped into their eyes, shirts clinging, but still Jinu didn't call for rest. Again, he barked, voice hoarse but unrelenting. Inu flopped onto the floor with a groan, pink hair plastered to his forehead. You're insane, Jinu. It's already midnight. Midnight means nothing, Jinu shot back, pacing like a drill sergeant. His violet-tinged patterns flickered faintly, a warning. Do you think Uzumaki is sleeping right now? No. He's training. Bleeding. Getting stronger. If we want even the smallest chance, his jaw clenched. We don't stop until it's perfect. Ryuk pulled his shirt over his head, wringing it out with a scowl. He's right. Indra didn't scare easy, and Uzumaki cut him down like it was nothing. If we don't sharpen ourselves now, we're already dead. Shu leaned against the wall, arms folded, a cocky grin plastered on his face. But his eyes betrayed him too sharp, too restless. Fine. Let's make it perfect then. No excuses. Giant cracked his knuckles, hair sticking to his damp face. Good. Because tomorrow isn't a performance. It's survival dressed as one. The speaker blared again, the beat shaking their bones, and the boys snapped back into position. Step by step, verse by verse, they drilled every move until muscle memory replaced fatigue. Hours blurred. They collapsed, cursed, got back up again. Ryuk barked corrections mid-step, Shu shoved Inu back into line when he lagged, Jinu clapped the beat until his palms stung raw. Every mistake was punished with another run, another repetition. By 3 a.m., their sneakers left streaks on the floor, their voices hoarse from shouting lyrics. By 4, their bodies ached, but the rhythm locked into them like chains tight, merciless, unshakable. By 5, the silence between them was heavy but resolute. Finally, Jinu raised a hand, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his chin. The track cut off, leaving only the sound of their ragged breathing. He scanned them, Inu sprawled but alert, Ryuk still on his feet though trembling, Shu rolling his shoulders like he had more fight left, Giant hunched but steady. They looked like hell. But they looked ready. This, Jinu said quietly, is what tomorrow demands. No slip-ups. No half-steps. Not one crack in the mask. We move as one, or we die as one. Silence answered, but no one argued. No one dared. The Saja boys had trained until dawn, every beat carved into their bones. Tomorrow, they would be perfect. Or they wouldn't survive. The sun bled pale light through the warehouse windows, strips of gold cutting across the floor where the Saja boys lay sprawled like corpses. The speakers were finally silent. Their breaths were the only sound, uneven and shallow, proof of the night they'd just survived. Inu groaned, throwing an arm over his face. If I move, I'll die. You're already dead. Wait, Shu muttered, though his voice was raw. He sat against the wall, a water bottle clutched in one trembling hand, sweat dripping from his chin. Ryuk stood in front of the cracked mirror, adjusting the collar of his half-buttoned shirt with the kind of vanity that never seemed to fade. But this time, even he looked pale. His reflection stared back tired, but fierce. No one outside these walls will see this. They'll only see perfection. Jian rubbed his aching knees, head bowed. Perfection or nothing. His tone wasn't sarcastic this time. It was final. Jinu pushed himself upright, every muscle screaming, but his eyes were sharp, cutting through their fatigue. His patterns glowed faintly in the daylight, pulsing like embers. Good. Because tonight, the humans won't just see idols. They'll see predators. They won't even realize they're being groomed. But if Uzumaki comes back before we've set the stage. He stopped, the memory of violet patterns and a cold grin flashing behind his eyes. Inu shivered and sat up, his messy pink hair catching the sun like fire. He won't. He's in Japan. We've got time. No, Jinu said firmly, pulling himself to his feet. His voice was iron. We don't have time. That's why this has to work tonight. Silence fell, heavy and unyielding. Then, one by one, the boys pushed themselves up, dragging exhaustion into resolve. They washed their faces in cold water, smoothed their clothes, forced their bodies upright until the weariness looked like confidence. By the time they stepped into the light outside, they weren't 5 demons running on fumes. They were the Saja boys. And they were ready. Naruto woke with a start, the ceiling above him unfamiliar, the sheets too crisp, too clean. For a fleeting second, muscle memory kicked and his hand reached across the mattress, searching for warmth. For the soft weight of Rumi tucked against him. Nothing. His chest tightened as the emptiness hit, harsher than the cold morning air. He would have even settled for Kakashi's heavy head planted on his ribs, that wet nose nudging him awake. But there was only silence. He sat up slowly, dragging a hand down his face. Then it came back to him. Takayama. The compound. Yesterday's stone walls and sharp eyes. The reminder that this wasn't a vacation, wasn't a mission he could half-ass. These were trials, and failure meant death. But none of that hurt as much as the thought that this was only the first day. Gods. The first real day, and he already wanted to go home. His mind wandered without his permission. He could hear Zoe's laugh, high and ridiculous, bouncing around the penthouse. Myra's sharp little digs, blunt but honest, the way she saw through him when no one else could. Even Bobby's stiff, overworked Bobby whose professionalism Naruto loved to poke holes in until the man snapped. And Kakashi. Always Kakashi. The shepherd who had wormed his way into Naruto's mornings, dragging him out of ramen paradise dreams with slobbery kisses and wagging tail. But most of all, he missed Rumi. The ache was sharp, like a kunai twisting under his ribs. He could see her as clear as if she were in front of him now, violet patterns flickering when she was flustered, her laugh soft against his ear, the warmth of her hand in his. She'd told him she'd be strong while he was gone, and he believed her. But belief didn't make the bed less empty. Naruto clenched his fists in the sheets, forcing himself to breathe. He was a shinobi. He could handle battles, even gods. but this? Missing her was the hardest fight yet. Naruto stretched his arms over his head, joints popping as the morning light spilled across the room. He barely noticed Aayaka frozen in the doorway, her face redder than a fresh tomato. "Morning," he said cheerfully, like nothing was weird about standing half-dressed in front of her. "You sleep okay? These floors are hard as hell. Not even a futon helps." Aayaka squeaked something that sounded vaguely like, "Fine," and quickly looked at the wall. Naruto wandered over to the table, rummaging through the folder she'd brought as though her presence wasn't out of the ordinary. "So this is all the trial stuff, huh? Man, I hate paperwork. Why can't they just throw me in a pit and say, 'Survive'? Would save everyone some time." Ayaka's knuckles whitened around the strap of her satchel. She risked one glance at him, instantly regretting it when her gaze caught on the scar running down his ribs. She whipped her head back toward the door, pulse hammering in her ears. Naruto, blissfully unaware, hummed to himself as he flipped a page. "Huh, schedule says sunrise. That's early, even for me. Guess I'll just drink extra miso soup tonight." He grinned, tapping the folder against his palm. "Thanks for bringing this. You're a lifesaver." Ayaka's heart nearly stopped when he flashed that grin at her, boyish, easy, completely unconscious of how much it made him glow. She turned so fast her cloak nearly smacked the doorframe. "I'll be back in an hour to show you around," she stammered, bolting out the door before he could respond. Naruto blinked after her, scratching the back of his head. Weird kid. Must have forgotten to eat breakfast or something. He shrugged, finally grabbing a shirt and tugging it over his head. "Welp. Better not be late. Rumi'd kick my ass if I screwed this up on day one." Aayaka bolted from the room, cloak whipping behind her as she practically ran down the stone corridor. Her face was on fire, her pulse refusing to settle. She'd thought she could handle this. She'd volunteered to be his translator because it sounded interesting. The first half-demon hunter in history other than Rumi, of course, but she was always treated like an exception. Aayaka wanted to see him up close, measure him for herself. She told herself it was just curiosity. But then he had to smile at her. Boyish. Bright. Oblivious. Like he didn't even know how heavy the air grew when he walked into a room. That grin had struck her like a blade to the ribs, and she hated how much it made her chest ache. Her hands tightened on the strap of her satchel as she rushed outside. Rumi. Always Rumi. The golden one. The exception. The girl who had his hand, his heart, his every look and laugh without even asking for it. Did Rumi even realize how rare that smile was? How lucky she was to be the one it belonged to. Aayaka slowed, biting down on her lip. The ache in her chest twisted into something sharper. She liked him. She could admit that much to herself. She liked the scars, the stubborn energy, the way he carried himself like someone who'd fallen 1,000 times and still got up again. That kind of strength she wanted to stand beside it. She wanted to be the one who earned it. But she wasn't. Because every ounce of that strength, that warmth, that loyalty, it was already spoken for. Still, Aayaka lifted her chin. No, she wasn't going to just step aside. She'd stay close. Closer than anyone else here. If cracks ever formed in the perfect picture of Naruto and Rumi, maybe then maybe he'd see her too. Her blush cooled into something steadier. Resentment. Resolve. She wasn't about to lose without trying. Naruto tugged his shirt over his head and stepped into the main corridor. The air was colder here, thick with the weight of expectation. At the far end, the council waited, a row of hunters whose faces were carved with displn, their eyes sharp enough to cut stone. Aayaka stood at the side, shoulders squared despite the tension in her posture. When Naruto's gaze brushed hers, she quickly looked down, clutching her satchel tighter before lifting her chin to translate. The eldest stepped forward, his silver-streaked hair catching the torchlight. His voice was low and resonant, each syllable deliberate. Aayaka spoke the words carefully. You have already killed demons. And from what we have been told, you were trained in the basics of hunting by Celine. The elder's eyes didn't waver, narrowing as if weighing Naruto's very soul. Because of this, Aayaka continued, you will remain here for 2 weeks instead of the mandatory 4. Silence followed. The corridor seemed to hold its breath. Naruto inclined his head slightly, his expression strppd of playfulness. His voice was steady, carrying without force, but clear enough to leave no doubt. 2 weeks. That's enough. I'll give everything I have. I won't waste your time. The elder studied him for a long moment, then gave a single, approving nod. Behind him, the younger hunters shifted uneasily, whispers barely audible. Ayaka's eyes flicked between Naruto and the council, her own chest tightening at the gravity in his tone. For once, there was no boyish grin, no easy joke. Only the resolve of a man who had fought gods and demons and knew he had to prove himself all over again. The elder's gaze lingered on Naruto, heavy as a blade. His lips moved again, voice sharp and deliberate. The sound of it made several of the younger hunters stiffen, one even eating in a sharp breath. A ripple of unease moved through the corridor. Even Ayaka's face went pale, her fingers tightening around her satchel strap until her knuckles whitened. She swallowed hard, then forced herself to speak. Her voice wavered despite her best effort. Due to your shortened trial PRD, the council has decided to increase the difficulty. For the first 3 days, you will be thrown into the forest of darkness. A murmur of shock rippled through the hunters behind the elder. One of them muttered something Aayaka didn't translate, but the tone was unmistakable. Pity. Aayaka hesitated before finishing, her throat dry. If you survive, you will be granted a single day of rest. After that your training will continue. She lowered her eyes. You have 6 hours to prepare. The silence that followed was suffocating. Naruto's stomach tightened. He'd faced worse gods, wars, monsters born from hatred, but the weight in the room told him this wasn't a test people walked away from easily. His hand curled into a fist at his side, knuckles pressing white. He forced a breath, steadying himself. His voice was lower than usual, serious enough to make Aayaka glance up at him. Fine. I'll survive. Believe it. The hunters around them exchanged uneasy glances. Some smirked like he didn't know what he was in for. Others looked at him with the kind of respect reserved for the already dead. But Naruto stood firm, even as a flicker of nerves pulsed through his chest. He had 6 hours. And he wasn't going to waste a single one. The Forest of Darkness. Even the name was spoken with caution among the hunters, like saying it too loud might wake something slumbering within. Ayaka's voice was tight as she explained to Naruto once the council had dismissed him. It's not just a forest. It's alive. Twisted. Everything in there wants you dead, the beasts, the trees, even the air itself. She hugged her satchel close, her usual coolness faltering. The canopy blocks out the sun so completely that you can't tell night from day. Hunters say you lose all sense of time in there. Sometimes people walk in circles for hours and end up at the same tree, even if they swore they walked straight. Naruto's brows drew together. Genjutsu. Aayaka looked confused, so he tried again, illusions. Aayaka shook her head quickly. Not exactly. It's worse. The forest feeds on your fears. It digs into your mind, dredges up what you don't want to face, then turns it into something you can see. Something that can hurt you. Naruto's jaw tightened. That sounded too much like the genjutsu nightmares he'd fought against during the war. Only now, he didn't have a team at his back to pull him out. And the demons? He asked. Her voice dropped lower. They're not like the ones you fought before. The forest doesn't just kill intruders, it corrupts them. Fallen hunters wander in there, half shadow, half man. They don't remember who they are. They just hunt whatever enters. The way she said it, Naruto knew she wasn't exaggerating. Her eyes flickered with something fear, maybe guilt. That's why the test is 3 days, Aayaka said, her lips pressing thin. Most people don't survive the first. Naruto fell silent, his thoughts racing. A place that attacked your body and your mind. A trial where failure wasn't humiliation, it was death. Still, after a long pause, he gave a faint grin, more grim than boyish. Sounds like my kind of forest. But in the pit of his stomach, he knew this would be different. The forest of darkness wasn't just a test of strength. It would claw at everything he'd buried, every regret, every ghost. And if he wasn't careful, it wouldn't just kill him. It would break him. Naruto's allotted 6 hours passed faster than he liked. He'd been shown to a small supply room, stone walls, shelves stacked with plain gear, nothing close to the luxury of the weapons back home. He tugged on a hunter's black tunic and strapped the provided armor plates over his shoulders and chest. Lighter than shinobi gear, but it would have to do. On the table sat a short list of essentials the hunters allowed: rope, flint, dried rations, a knife. Naruto tucked them into a small pack, but his hand never strayed far from his soul blade. The orange steel glinted faintly as if it sensed what was coming. He rolled his shoulders, testing the fit, and felt the scars across his body pull tight. Forest of darkness, huh? He'd fought gods. He'd fought armies. But this? This was different. This would claw at his mind, not just his body. 3 days, he muttered under his breath. Just 3 days. I've done worse. But the words rang hollow. He hated the idea of being cut off. No Rumi, no Zoey or Mira, no Kakashi whining at his door. Just him, alone, with every ghost he'd ever failed whispering in the dark. His hand drifted to his pocket, pulling out his phone. The screen glowed with the last photo he'd taken before leaving Rumi laughing with Zoey, her braid half loose, her eyes catching the light. His chest squeezed. North Star, he whispered. Guess you'll have to shine extra bright while I'm in there. He traced the screen once with his thumb before shoving it back into his pocket. Couldn't afford to break down now. Instead, he dropped into push-ups, then squats, then sit-ups, his usual warm-up. The rhythm steadied him, sweat rolling down his back, the burn in his muscles drowning out the thoughts clawing at his head. When he finished, his chest was heaving, but his eyes were clearer. By the time Aayaka returned to escort him to the gates, Naruto was already standing with his pack slung over his shoulder, blade at his hip, and his expression sharpened. He wasn't walking into the forest of darkness as a boy fumbling in the unknown. He was walking in as Uzumaki Naruto shinobi, survivor, and the man who promised himself he'd make it back to her. The gates loomed ahead, carved of blackened wood and iron. Beyond them stretched a wall of trees so dense the sunlight seemed to stop at their edge, swallowed whole. The air itself grew colder the closer Naruto stepped, the kind of cold that didn't bite the skin, but sank straight into the bones. Hunters lined the path, silent, their eyes hard but curious. Aayaka walked at his side, her cloak pulled tight. She glanced up at him once, lips pressed thin, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. The elder raised his hand, and the gates creaked open. The sound echoed like a groan from something ancient. Naruto adjusted the strap on his pack, hand brushing the hilt of his blade. His pulse thudded steady in his ears, not from fear exactly but from instinct. Every cell in his body screamed danger. The elder's voice carried over the hush. Survive 3 days. Return with your soul intact. Fail and you won't return at all. Aayaka translated softly, her voice trembling. Naruto didn't answer right away. He stared into the forest, where the shadows writhed like living things. His gut twisted not at the trial itself, but at the thought of Rumi's face if he never walked out. He let out a long breath, steadying himself. No. That's not an option. I promised her. I promised myself. Turning to Aayaka, He gave her his usual crooked grin though his eyes stayed sharp. Guess this is where the fun starts. And without waiting for another word, he stepped past the threshold. The instant his foot touched the forest floor, the light shifted. The world behind him, the hunters, the open sky dimmed to a smear of gray. The trees closed in, their branches like claws blotting out what little sun remained. The air thickened, heavy with the stench of rot and something wrong. A whisper curled at the edge of his mind. Not words, just presence. Hungry, curious. Watching. Naruto's grip tightened on his soul blade. His violet patterns flickered faintly across his skin, answering the darkness. All right, he muttered to the unseen eyes around him, voice steady. Come at me. The gates slammed shut behind him. And the forest of darkness swallowed him whole. The silence pressed in as Naruto moved deeper. Not the silence of peace but the suffocating quiet of predators holding their breath. Every crunch of leaves beneath his boots sounded too loud, every rustle in the canopy above too deliberate. The deeper he went, the thicker the air became, heavy with decay. The trees here weren't normal, their bark oozed black sap, their branches twisted into shapes that looked too much like hands. Naruto paused at a clearing, tilting his head. His senses prickled. A low hiss slithered through the shadows. Something crawled out of the tree, its body long and sinewy, skin stretched too thin, eyes glowing white with no pupils. Its jaw unhinged wider than it should have, rows of jagged teeth glinting in what little light pierced the canopy. Naruto's soul blade flared to life in his grip, the orange glow casting faint circles of safety around him. His patterns burned faintly violet red across his arms, thrumming with his heartbeat. The creature shrieked, the sound so sharp it rattled the marrow in his bones, and lunged. Naruto shifted, footwork sharp, every muscle remembering training on that remote island. He let the blade guide him, sliding sideways as the beast's claws raked the air. Steel met flesh with a wet crack. The blade carved a line through its arm, but instead of BLD, thick black smoke poured out, curling into the air like burning tar. The creature didn't falter, it screeched louder, swinging again. Naruto gritted his teeth. So this is the forest of darkness. Demons without fear, without hesitation. The monster lunged low this time, fast, forcing Naruto back against the tree line. He kicked off the trunk, flipping over it, landing hard but steady. The blade pulsed brighter in his hands. Fine, he muttered, breath sharp. If you're gonna keep coming. He slashed in a wide arc, letting his energy pour into the strike. The orange flare carved through the clearing, splitting the beast across its chest. This time the shriek was cut short. The smoke gushed out in waves before the creature collapsed into nothing but ash and shadow. The silence returned, heavier than before. Watching. Waiting. Naruto stood there, chest heaving, blade dripping faintly with shadow stuff. His eyes flicked around the trees, instincts gnawing. That was just the start. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then goodbye.